Good Morning Show with Troy Torres is brought to you by 76 Circle K Guam.
I think it's looking more and more like I need to get into the grass cutting business. It's, I'm just kidding. I want no government contracts. I never want the messiness of any of this stuff. And my name is Troy Torres. It is 8:05 a.m. on Friday, June 19, 2026. More than this is the morning news analysis. Today is Juneteenth. And it is an extremely important holiday, far more important than many of the American holidays we celebrate, because it signifies or commemorates the day, June 19, 1865, when General, I think the last name is Granger or Gordon. It's Granger or Gordon. That's like a flip of his name. Like first is Granger, and or the first or last name is Granger. The first or last name is Gordon. Anyway, he rides into Texas and announces to those who had been, the government there and the people there had been treating as slaves, that slavery had ended 2.5 years prior, when on January 1, 1863, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. And so it took 2.5 years for that news to reach the slaves of Texas. Of course, other people knew, right? The slave owners, they knew about the Emancipation Proclamation. But, knowledge is power. And one of the reasons that Juneteenth is so significant for us as a country, on top of reminding us that we weren't always this free place, is to remind us that we still are not a free place, that we still are a nation of states that are, and people who are divided along racial and other lines. And those divisions have been far more pronounced over the past couple of years. And a reminder of the power of the government. No matter what the issue is with race or class or anything, the power of the government and the power of the oligarchy over the people. This is such a significant day. And so to all of us, happy Juneteenth. I think we have to be very careful whenever we talk about public-private partnerships and outsourcing. And, the late Senator Ben Pangilinan, and now I see his wisdom in this. When before, I was a member of the Republican, I was the secretary, I was an officer of the Republican Party. I worked for Republican administrations, and I was impressed with all the things that the Republicans said, and I was, we got to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and smaller government and all this stuff, right? Replacements for things like efficiency, getting rid of wasteful habits, things started to replace that, like outsourcing, public-private partnerships, and while there are benefits to things like that, right? What the late Senator Ben Pangilinan reminded us was that greed dominates. And when we hand our public institutions, which are in their most ideal form, institutions of service and accomplishment for people, no matter where you come from, your social status, your race, your religion. When we hand these institutions over to a system or over to institutions whose primary driver is profit, we risk massive corruption. And the more I look into just grass cutting services in the government of Guam, number one, I want to buy some lawnmowers and do some grass cutting services in the government of Guam, because, man, is it a lucrative business when you look at these contracts. And there's nothing wrong with people making money. But let me tell you the story of an agency using federal National Guard funds to outsource on an annual basis more than $250,000 on grass cutting services, while it also has several maintenance workers and heavy equipment to accomplish those grass cutting services. Signed off by a quartermaster who is a co-defendant in the Tenorio corruption case for a company that is owned by a person very close to Charissa Tenorio, the head of the Tenorio corruption case alleged conspiracy. I'll take you through the property pros contract over at the Guam National Guard on the other side of this commercial break. Please do stick with us. We'll have fun with this. It's unclear who was doing the grass cutting work over at Department of Military Affairs. That's the local name for the agency under which the Guam National Guard resides. And the head of the Department of Military Affairs is also known as the Adjutant General of the Guam National Guard, appointed by the governor. This is for a period that precedes the current Adjutant General, Karen Watson. And according to these documents, at least according to what was disclosed, this business relationship no longer exists, at least according to the documents that were disclosed on a FOIA that we did. So this is about Property Pros's contract between, or services rendered for the Guam National Guard, or for the Department of Military Affairs. And we previously had this conversation regarding Property Pros taking over the Tiguac Cemetery contract over at the Department of Parks and Recreation. And we previously have reported, and we did a news story too, about we did a deep dive into the ownership of Property Pros, and it is a company that that on paper is owned by Jonathan Terlahi, who is the son of Joey Terlahi, the Deputy Director of Parks and Recreation, who, when asked at an oversight hearing, are there any conflicts of interest within this agency for this Property Pros contract, he answered no. When asked again, when pushed more by Senator Chris Duenas, he handed the mic over to new director Robert Lizama, who had nothing to do with this contract. He's just a new acting director of Parks and Rec. Turned off the microphone and held it, turned off Bob Lizama's microphone and held it, whispered to Bob Lizama. Then Bob Lizama hands the answer of the question over to Parks Administrator John Glenn Taitagui, who doesn't answer the question and went into the need for the grass cutting services over at Teaguac Cemetery. Nobody answered the question after that. And so that's a little background on our investigation into Property Pros. On April 22nd, we sent out a bunch of FOIAs. One of them was to the Department of Administration for all the payments, the invoices, the requisitions, the purchase orders, everything dealing with Property Pros. Department of Administration never got back to us until 2 days ago when we followed up asking, hey, is this some sort of mishandling of this Freedom of Information Act request? Because you guys got 4 working days to respond and to disclose the documents. I'd like the documents today. I spoke with John Jr. Calvo, the governor's chief of staff. He was instrumental in getting Rena Borja, the deputy director of administration, to have her secretary give me a call and patch me through to her so that she could ask whether I could whittle down my request. I whittled it down. I gave her the name. Yesterday morning, I've gotten no response from Department of Administration. This morning, John Jr. Calvo, I messaged him and I was like, hey, I just wanted to let you know I did all this and I've gotten no response from DOA. And John Jr. Calvo said that he'll check up on it. I mean, these are the same problems that we encountered with the Comfort Cuts FOIA, same problems where we encountered with several other FOIAs where we had a hunch or we had a tip that there was something that wasn't right about something that was going on in the government. And so let's get these documents disclosed so we can see what's going on. So in the case of Property Pros and the Department of Military Affairs, I don't know who was cutting the grass or doing the maintenance or the pest control or whatever over at Department of Military Affairs. So that's Fort Juan Muña, right? And that's also the Barrigada Readiness Center. I'm not sure who was doing it prior to 2023, but in 2023, services were rendered, according to these documents, over at Department of Military Affairs, and a direct payment. Here is the direct payment voucher. Department of Administration, or the request or whatever, the justification for non-procurement amounting to a direct payment request for $10,700 approved by Kathleen Pareto, not by Mike Cruz. The agency head on this is not showing as Dr. Michael Cruz, who was the adjutant general at the time, but Kathleen Pareto. The reason the name might sound familiar to you is Kathleen Pareto is one of the co-defendants in the Tenorio corruption case. She's the quartermaster over at Department of Military Affairs. She took that job sometime after she was the head of the PUA office over at the Guam Department of Labor. So this was a direct payment for $10,700 to Property Pros. It's a non-procurement request, and it was for a building, the $8,500 payment for the grass cutting services, the mowing, edge trimming, and blowing of designated areas at Building 800, completed on March 13. Oh, I'm so sorry. This one is 2026. Let me hold on to this one. Let me hold on to that one. That's, hold on, okay? That's the recent one. This one is the 2024 one. So this, and 2026, January 2026, I want to say that was Karen Watson. So I have to take that back. I'm so sorry. I think this does extend into Karen Watson's term. We'll have to ask her for an interview on this. So this one is a direct payment request that was made to the Department of Administration by the Department of Military Affairs. an urgent expedite direct payment request for $24,000 for grass cutting services, ground maintenance that occurred in December of 2023, uh, as Property Pros has indicated. $24,000 for this is for the Barrigada complex. It was approved by the approving official. At this time, Mike Cruz was the adjutant general, but his name is not on this. The name that's typed out as the approving official is the quartermaster, Kathleen Pareto, and she signed it on January 6, 2024. In this, there's an email chain that goes that includes and one of the, I don't know her title, but Nicole Pinala she's with the Department of Military Affairs. She's not an approving authority. I'm trying to find her title. Sorry. Special Projects Coordinator she's under Kathleen Pareto's office. She's with the Office of the Quartermaster. So an email chain among Kathleen Pareto, Nicole Pinala, who's basically the one doing the administrative work, right? And Kathleen is on the email chain in order to answer questions from Department of Administration, which includes Cody Crisostomo and Christina Ilagan over at the Division of Accounts. And everything goes back and forth. And then on January 25, 2024, at 10:18 a.m., Nicole Pinala writes to Christina Ilagan and says, "Hi, Chris. Just following up on this, I know everyone is busy with the new financial system, but vendors have been calling more often to follow up on payment." 21 minutes later, at 10:39 a.m., Christina Ilagan writes, "Hi, Nicole. Sorry about that. I just approved it, but I think that these should go through the procurement process so that it doesn't get flagged in an audit for procurement and debarment." Nicole writes back the same timestamp at 10:39 a.m. "I understand." And then a minute later, she writes, "Here you go," and sends 2 attachments. I'm not sure what the attachments are. And then 2 minutes later, Kathleen Pareto responds. And she says to Christina Ilagan, copying DOA invoice account Goody Rosario, who is if I'm not mistaken, Goody is now the head of the Division of Accounts. He was there when I was in the government. That's my friend too. He's a very nice guy. And Nicole Pinala over at DMA. Kathleen writes, "Half a day. Yes, these will be the last direct payments. We are waiting for the bid to be processed through GSA. Our maintenance staff will cover until then. These were just emergencies due to the confusion with GSA in the beginning. Thank you all for your assistance." So I have 2 questions. One is, why didn't she start this procurement earlier? Then January 6, 2024 is when the records indicate the procurement was started. But probably a more important question is, if you have a maintenance staff and if you have the lawn maintenance equipment, why is this service being outsourced? Or why do you have a maintenance staff and heavy equipment for lawn services? Because according to these documents, it's more than $250,000, $231,000 in the requisition for the grass cutting services or for the maintenance and pest control over at the Barrigada Readiness Center and Fort Juan Munya. I can understand maybe maintenance control if they don't have the supplies or the expertise or the manpower over at Department of Military Affairs to accomplish that. But as for the lawn maintenance, and I want to let you know too, like in case you're like, yeah, that's the lawn maintenance might be like that's a thing, and maybe there's not enough maintenance workers or whatever, right? I'd like you to know that one of these direct payments includes $15,800 to prepare the Barrigada Readiness Center from October 26 to 27, 2023 for the trunk or treat. Yeah, we paid $15,800, or the federal government did, because these are federal funds. The federal government paid $15,800 for grounds maintenance for the trunk or treat in 2023. There's just we're gonna be doing, of course, a whole story on this, and we're gonna be requesting an interview with Karen Watson, who is the adjutant general, to ask her, like, what the hell, what's going on here? Are you a little bit concerned about how this looks, about the perceived connections between people in your agency and people tied to the largest federal corruption case in the history of this island, to a company tied to one with ties to the alleged head of the conspiracy, or the head of the alleged conspiracy? This is not looking all that great for the Department of Military Affairs. And the fact that one of these direct payments happened during the time that Karen Watson already was the adjutant general, January 2026. I don't think that bodes well for them either. Anyway, we will be continuing our coverage on Property Pros and the contracts it has over in the government of Guam and its connections to the government of Guam. For Kandit News, I'm Troy Torres. You all have a blessed day. Happy Juneteenth, a significant day for us all, and a blessed day for this country. You know, we're not a perfect country. We're not. But still, the best darn country on this earth, where, by and large, we get to say what we want to say within the limits of the law, within safety limits, right? We get to do what we want to do as long as we're not hurting other people. We get to participate in the marketplace that, granted, is shrinking more and more with the oligarchy. But tested through all of this, including through that dark era of slavery, our country has come out stronger, more morally capable and grounded. And we pursue the highest values and the highest virtues of humanity on a day-to-day basis. And as long as those of us who pursue those virtues and those values continue to not just live that out, but to speak that loudly, good always will overcome the evil trying to put this country down. For Kandit News, I'm Troy Torres. God bless you all, and have a happy Juneteenth.
You asked, we delivered. Guam Autospot is extending our overstock sell-off with the hottest deals on island, like our 2025 GMC Canyon with $4,000 off. Or slide into a brand new Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross, starting at just $24,995. September is your chance to drive big and save even bigger. Visit us today or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com or call 478-AUTO. Guam Autospot, where the savings never stop.
This stuff's hitting the spot.